Ask and you shall receive. I messed that up. Ask and you shall receive. There we go. I've been asked for a while to start a podcast, and I've always been open to the idea. I just didn't know how I wanted to format it, didn't know the approach that I wanted to take. And if you're coming from TikTok or Instagram, whatever platform of mine you're coming from, I talk about the idea of wanting to continue to encourage intellectual conversation and to encourage curiosity, to never just be complacent, to never just take things that you hear and run with. I've always wanted to try and build a safe space for people to continue to seek knowledge, seek truth. And whether that comes in areas such as addressing stigmas and taboos, right? I mean, I'm from the brown community, we have plenty of taboos. Or whether it's just making you sit and reflect. And that is the name of this podcast. It's called Sit and Reflect, where we take a topic or we take a question and we break it down. We deep dive with the sole focus of encouraging curiosity, building that safe space, and expanding intellectually. Not just for myself, but also anyone watching this. I read everything. So anything you say, I've seen it. So I want to take that idea still and bring it here. I have my iPad with me. If you're watching this on YouTube, I have my iPad with me. You can see how big it is. I'm also going to be posting this on Spotify podcasts and Apple podcasts. So if you want to listen to it just audio-wise, you don't want to look at my ugly ass, that's perfectly fine. And I'm going to try to upload once every Sunday. And on the YouTube channel, I'm going to try and do one podcast a week and then one just long form yap video, maybe once or twice a month, maybe. And my TikTok and my Instagram will just stay as normal. But without further ado, let's just dive in. Today's question: what truly warrants change? And I think this is a very interesting question. I think it's a question that I think is very relevant to just the overall direction that society is moving towards, especially from the lens of social media, where we're constantly seeing this idea that we need to push towards something. That we need to be 1% better every day, which is true. And that idea of change comes in different ways, whether it's hustle culture. For example, hustle culture, even though I have my gripes with the whole hustle culture kind of movement, because I feel like it implicitly, or even sometimes explicitly, connotates that you have to be go, 24/7, as if it's just some sort of linear path, when I think change and growth is a very non-linear thing. There's going to be times where you're better than other days. But eventually you get to a point where you're still able to either improve in small increments or at least be able to stay where you're at. That's the goal that you want to get to in terms of growth, is that maybe some days that growth is exponential, that you are making huge visible strides. Maybe there's days where those wins are not as large, a lot more incremental. Maybe some days you don't get anything done. Or maybe some days you fall back into an old habit. This all constitutes under change. This all constitutes under growth. I think change and growth can be used synonymously to a degree, because you can still have negative change, which we'll also talk about today. But it comes in different forms. It comes in different forms, whether it's spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, academic, financial. Change comes in a bunch of different forms. And externally, the motives are different. You look in the mirror one day and you say, damn, I'm fat as hell. I gotta change. Your motive externally is because I look like garbage. I want to improve that. Or for example, damn, my grades suck. My grades suck. I'm trying to go to grad school, or I'm just trying to show myself that I'm a much better student than the results that I'm putting out right now. I got to start studying more. That external change is a different type of motive. It still falls under the umbrella of change, but it's a different kind of change. Emotional. You start going to therapy. You start sitting with your emotions better. You put yourself in more confrontational environments where you're actually having to have uncomfortable conversations. This is also change, but it's a different kind. But these different external kinds of changes, I think, also have an intrinsic similarity, even if the external results are different. And I think it's important that we establish some sort of common ground for what we're going to use as change as we continue throughout this. Take a shot every time I say this damn word. I'm going to be saying it a lot today. I came up with 3, and I'm going to explain each one. I said observable, quantifiable, and trackable. And you might be wondering that trackable can fall under the subset of the first 2, observable and quantifiable, which I would agree with, but not everything. So that's why I gave it its own separate thing. And trackable is going to be, I'm going to make the argument today that trackable is going to be more for internal change rather than observable and quantifiable. But like I said, trackable, well, you can make an argument that it'll fall under the other 2. I will make that clear distinction. Observable, for example, you start working out. You change your diet up. You're looking better. I can observe that you're not a fat fuck anymore. I can observe that. You can look down, you can see your toes now. We can observe that. We can see that clearly. I can observe your 8-pack. You get the point. Quantifiable, grades, change on the weight scale, bench pressing or squatting a different number. These are quantifiable. Going from 0 internships to 6 internships, that's quantifiable progress. Trackable is different because I'm going to mainly put trackable for emotions. Stuff that goes on in your head. Stuff that goes on in your heart. Your emotions. Because yes, you can absolutely make an argument that, oh, there's a fly. You can absolutely make the argument that it's observable, right? Because let's say you're able to sit with emotions better. Therefore, when you get in arguments, you're able to handle them better. That's an observable thing. But it goes unnoticed more often than not. That's why trackable is really a self-measure. It's a self-metric that only really you will be able to understand, because you will only be able to see that, oh wow, I didn't blow up in that argument the way I maybe would have 6 months or a year ago. Wow. The other person in that argument might not see that, but you'll be able to see that. Like, damn, I did a lot better with that. Sitting with discomfort, that maybe initially when something happens, your immediate reaction is to just react, just to do something, right? Send a text you're gonna forget. Send a rant to somebody that you're gonna say hurtful things, whatever. 6 months, a year later, you're able to sit with that feeling for a few days before you react, a few days before you tell anybody. Other people probably won't notice that. You will be able to notice that. So that's why I have trackable as its own metric. And I'm also going to go a step further and say that trackable is the metric within here that others will not be able to notice, generally speaking. If you're hypervigilant, you'll notice it. But not everybody's hypervigilant. Even though social media likes it says everyone likes to self-diagnose themselves nowadays. Looking at my iPad right now. Change isn't... Oh, another great point. Oh my God. I'm so smart sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So smart. when we talk about this idea of change, so another thing that we also need to talk about is that you can acquire the knowledge, but the application of your knowledge is really what's going to be able to allow this change to occur. It's kind of like that idea that some people are, myself, I'm gonna talk about myself actually, I'm gonna make this more personal. I reflect too much for my own good sometimes, to the point that I often paralyze myself. That I will overanalyze a situation. I will try to plan out every single specific detail before I actually change. When in reality, I could have known half the things that I actually do, and I probably could have seen double the progress. It's crazy how that works. And life is a clear example of that. The people that are able to acquire the most change, people that are able to just go out in the world, do stuff, see if it sticks, they have a bit of ignorance to them. And this is, I'd say, one of the rare cases of ignorance that is actually positive, net positive. Because they don't have to think too much. They just go out and do stuff. They don't have to think about the implications of, oh, if I do this, then what happens to XYZ situation? Or before I do this, I need to understand XYZ. They just go out, they do it, they learn based off trial and error. I would say that's much more important than just sitting and knowing that, okay, in order for me to go to the gym, or in order for me to change, I need to go to the gym, I need to develop a better diet. My macros need to look like this, my calories need to look like this, I need to get my protein sources from here, my fat sources, my carb sources, to the point that you never even start. Overanalyzing and this idea of analysis paralysis, or watching self-improvement videos that give you that blueprint, they make you feel as if you're more productive than you actually are. When in reality, a lot of your production is going to just come from you doing the thing. So even though I would argue that just simply going out and doing is a lot better than just knowing, you still need to have both. So when these people that have this sense of ignorance, again, the net positive ignorance, when they go out and they try things, they still have a general idea, they just don't know as much as you. For example, if you wanted to pick up to learn how to code, if you enjoy that stuff, coming from a CS major, by the way, I want to learn how to code. The overanalyzer will go, pick out a language, find a resource, find multiple resources in case the first was not sufficient enough, make a plan for projects they'll make, blah, 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 blah. They have 10, 12 different things that they'll go through and then still not do anything. They've gone through 10 to 12 of these different ideas, and they still haven't written a piece of code yet. Person on the other side, the ignorant one. I want to learn how to code. Okay. Pick a language, pick a resource, get to work. Get to work. And you will learn. You're going to get that hands-on experience going on that resource, even if that resource isn't great. You can walk away from that crash course. Let's say it's a crash course. You pick a crash course. Okay. What can I do with this now? Let me try and build something. Oh, wait. To build this, I need to know how to do this. I need to know how to do that. How can I learn that? And you're learning as you're building, and boom. Next thing you know, you take these two people 6 months later, the person that was ignorant runs laps around the person that's too damn smart for their own good. So you gotta know, you gotta have that balance. And that's another thing we're gonna talk about is how can we find that balance? And honestly, that's something I struggled with a lot. And I still do to a degree, but I've gotten a lot better at it. So I feel like potentially I am qualified to actually talk about this. People want to change for different reasons. There's different angles you can take as to why you want to change. I pointed out 3 different angles: pain, identity, and environment. I think these are three things that we can differentiate amongst each other. Some people want to change because they've just been hurt for too long. For example, as a child, you were abused. As a child, you were neglected. You didn't have a good support system around you. And as a result, that caused a lot of pain as a child, and pain that still resonates, that still shows its rear ugly head in your day-to-day life as a 20-year-old, a 25-year-old, a 30, 40, 50-year-old. How many of our parents have unpacked trauma that they didn't work through and now take it out on the kids? Brown family 101. That's how it goes. We're in a unique situation of Gen Z and millennials that we have the resources to make that change now. Go to therapy. As just an example. But what put us into therapy? All the hurt that we were caused by our family. You check yourself in, you build that trust with a therapist, you learn things about yourself, you learn about the why and the how and the what to do. It's a very different type of motive. Identity is the reason why people change. They don't want to be known as the fat friend anymore. They don't want to be known as the dumb one in the group. They don't want to be known as the worst basketball player on the court. They want to have an identity shift. And usually a lot of the times, this identity shift also comes with the idea of excellence, the idea that I want to be the best. It's a different type of motive. It's a different type of hunger that the identity angle brings. Because maybe it is true from a foundational standpoint of pain, but I wouldn't use the terminology that I'm so hungry to work through my trauma. Most people don't want to work through their trauma. Whereas I think you will find a lot more people that will be hungry to change their identity rather than hungry to work through their pain. People will go through this entire identity shift and still have all that packaged pain. So they drive a nicer car, they look better, they play better on the floor, whatever it is, but they still can't hold a relationship down. They end up being horrible parents themselves. It's a different type of motive, which I would classify identity as hunger. You're hungry to change the way you are perceived, your identity. I just cooked right there. I was off the dome. That wasn't even the notes. Last one, environment. I grew up around gang culture. I grew up around a lot of people doing drugs. I told myself that I was not going to be a product of my environment. At least not in the way that it's usually implied when you use that statement. The funny thing about that statement, little side tangent, the funny thing about that statement of product of your environment, you changing and you not being the traditional product of your environment is you still being a product of your environment. You having a rough environment pushed you to not be like that. Therefore, you're also the product of your environment. It's just not in the implication that it's used in. So we have these three angles: pain, identity, and environment. Let's go back to those three metrics: observable, quantifiable, trackable. Do all of these three metrics meet in these different angles? Let's look at pain. Can you observe pain? Absolutely. You can absolutely observe pain that someone has gone through. Is it quantifiable? I will make the argument yes. I'll make the argument yes. As an example, let's say you're 23. 23 is the year that you decide that I need to make a change. You have 23 years worth of data, 23 years worth of experience that has allowed you to come to this conclusion that something's got to give. I say that's quantifiable. Quantifiable in the idea that there's data. There is things that we can specifically point at, that this specific thing caused me pain. This other specific thing caused me pain. Therefore, it's quantifiable. Is it trackable? Now let's think back to what I said that allowed trackable to be its own metric. And it was mainly that it's going to be mainly an internal thing. Trackable is the one thing that you're only going to really be able to understand yourself. Can you track how well you've handled pain throughout the years? Absolutely. Not everyone's going to see that, but you'll be able to. That, wow, I grew up hating this person, but now I'm indifferent to them. That's change. That's trackable. Because you can also reflect, sit and reflect. See what I did there? You can sit and reflect on how you got to that point of being indifferent towards someone. Therefore, I will make the argument that it's trackable. Identity. Is it observable? Hell yeah. You go from not being able to see your toes to now being able to see your toes. We can observe that change. We can observe the fact that you don't have to tug your shirt anymore when you walk around. That's observable. Quantifiable, absolutely. You went from 0 internships to 6 internships. You went from getting 50s and 60s on exams to 8s in them. You went from not being able to bench the bar to not benching 315. These are all quantifiable. There's data points. Last but not least, is it trackable? Absolutely. You can look at different points in your life before you started your journey, throughout your journey, and where you are now. And you can sit and reflect on certain aspects of you that have changed. Confidence is the first thing that comes to mind. That throughout this initial stages of shifting your identity, you're not confident. You don't know if you can even make this change. You start compounding those wins. You start seeing that difference. You start observing see it all ties together. You start observing the change. Therefore, you gain confidence. Therefore, you can look back at points and you can see the entire timeline. Therefore, it's trackable. Environment. Observable? Absolutely. You can walk out and see a crackhead tweaking. You can see that. Quantifiable. This one's an interesting one. How do you quantify an environment? What data points can you work off in an environment? Crime rate, drug usage rate. You can even get super meticulous and talk about the public school. These are things you can quantify. It's just a bit of a more tedious one. And then trackable. Absolutely. Where did I come from? Who am I now? Night and day difference. That's trackable. You can even pinpoint certain moments in that shift where you were really starting to break out of the apparent shackles that your environment puts you in. Therefore, it meets all three. I also think it's interesting because even though these are different angles, I still think everyone is affected by these angles. I think it's very rare that you experience only one of these things. I think at least two of them are going to be overlapped with each other. You can really make an argument for all three of them. For example, if you're trying to lose weight, you got to ask yourself, why? Because I'm fat, okay. But where does the pain come from that? Are you being picked on? Are you just disappointed in yourself? Do you lack confidence? Those are all pain points. You don't want to be known as a fat guy anymore. That's identity. Environment's an interesting one because I can definitely see the argument because you're changing your eating habits. Maybe you're going to a gym now. Those are environment changes, but I guess the specific angle that I was taking with environment when I was writing my notes down was more of just your upbringing rather than just putting yourself in different rooms. But you can make that argument for sure. I'm not even gonna pretend as if that argument doesn't exist. It definitely does. And I'm sure that's something that I'll probably get feedback on. And it's interesting because most people will experience all three, but I guess they're not independent of each other. Change is one of those things where the different angles are not dependent or not independent of each other. They all kind of play their role. And maybe that's a misconception that it has to be one thing. It has to be one moment. It has to be one statement that someone said. When in reality, you're going to experience a multitude of reasons of change. You're going to have plenty of different external motives. But it comes back to this idea that I mentioned earlier. What is that one intrinsic value, that one intrinsic trait that all three of these angles share? That any angle that you want to put share. That all these external reasonings can come back to one intrinsic reasoning. And honestly, I've been thinking about it as I've been yapping. I think the one trait that I'm going to go with for the sake of my arguments is exhaustion. I think that the one intrinsic similarity that all these different external values of change have is exhausted. You get to a breaking point. You get to some point where you are tired. You are fed up. You do not want to continue to repeat a cycle. I think that's what it comes down to. You don't want to continue to be a fat ass. So what do? You get fed up. I want to be able to look down and see if I need to cut my nails or not. Exhaustion. I'm sick and tired of getting bad grades. Exhaustion. I'm sick and tired of feeling as if I'm not worthy of love. Exhaustion. These are all things that you can classify as exhaustion. So therefore, my answer to the one intrinsic similarity is exhaustion. Now I can put the iPad away because now I'm going to be talking about myself. I've had a lot of different shifts in my life when it comes to making change. And I would say that all of my change comes back to the three pillars that I already mentioned. My reasoning to change came from three factors: pain, identity, and environment. And the one thing that all three of those angles have in common is that I was exhausted. I was exhausted of being a scapegoat. I was exhausted of being the ass of every joke. I was sick and tired of looking in the mirror and squeezing my love handles. That, yo, I don't like this. I don't like that I gotta pull my jeans over my fupa. I don't wanna keep doing that. I got tired of being around people that didn't want more for themselves. And it came with a very, very large set of problems. Because change is non-linear. There's going to be days where you're going to be able to make more progress than other days. There's going to be times where you might not make any progress at all. It feels like you have truly stagnated. And you ask yourself, what am I doing? Am I beating a dead horse? Am I wasting my time? My GPA is not that great, but I want to pursue higher education. Can I do that? Is it even worth my time? Sure, on paper, like, in theory, I could do it. Do I have what it takes to make it happen? I look out into my life. I'm not going to talk about specifically the things that I wish out of myself, because people are weird. I can't share my aspirations out in the open like that. I look out into my life, and I have this vision of who I want to be. I have this vision of the life that I live, the things I'm able to do, whether it's autonomy or whether it's philanthropic work. I look out and I build this vision via maladaptive daydreaming and Pinterest boards of what I want my life to be. And I've built a blueprint for the things that I need to do, the things I need to accomplish. But I fall into this analysis paralysis. I fall into this over planning to the point that I've meticulously planned every stroke of this painting that is the life that I want to live, that when I mess up one of these strokes, I throw the whole painting away. I dash the entire painting away. So now all I have to show is a bunch of unfinished canvases, is hundreds, maybe even thousands of unfinished canvases, because I didn't see it through. I'm 21 years old. I know a lot of people say I don't look 21. It's probably the beard and the stress. But I'm 21. And I would say, generally speaking, I don't live a life of regrets, because everything that I've been through, every mistake that I've made has allowed me to be the person I am today. I wouldn't be making this podcast if it wasn't for the mistakes that I've made. Do you understand? Like that's made me who I am. But if I did say that there was a regret of mine, it was to not see the course through. Is to not have given up on things as easily. Because even though I would say that my general goals haven't changed, I've spent more time revising these plans and getting the illusion that I'm making change rather than just shutting the hell up and doing the work. Just shutting up and doing the work. The same way if someone wants to learn a skill, they say, what are the basic things that I need? How can I learn the basics? Let's give it a shot. Versus planning each and every single meticulous detail, you spend way more time planning than you need to. You start second guessing yourself way more than you need to. And that is exactly what I've done. Change the environment for a second. That's why we had a little bit of a break. If you're audio, then this probably doesn't even affect you. I'm just yapping. You're like, why did you just go off topic? But for the YouTube viewers, you'll know. But I remember where I was. I could have made exponential amounts of progress if I just didn't change my course. But my biggest problem was that I looked at everything black and white. I looked at everything as an end-all, be-all, pendulum swing kind of thing. Where either I'm getting everything that I need to, every single compounded win that I calculated and I planned for is happening. And if one of those things don't happen, pendulum swings the whole other way. And my immediate reaction is that I did something wrong. I did not plan for something properly. How can I make sure that doesn't happen again? Then I'll meticulously plan again. And it will happen, and the same exact cycle will happen over and over and over again, to the point that I've really made no progress because I can't get past a certain point. And if I do restart and then let's say, build off from where I was, I'll make a little bit of progress and then get stalled again. So it's to the point that I'll make 2, 4, 6 weeks of progress, get stalled for another month, start back again. So at that point, are you really making much progress? No, not in the way that you could be if you just adjusted as you went. Okay, I didn't do good on this exam. What are some of the things that I'm doing well, but what are the things that I need to change? Instead of scrap the whole study plan, we gotta start all over. Sometimes you'll have those moments, absolutely. But 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. My biggest problem was that I would just take that extreme, that no, I did something wrong entirely. My entire approach was wrong. I have to start over. And as a result, it stalled me. And although there are a lot of other things that I can point to as to why I haven't reached the levels of success that I want to reach yet, because I think a lot of these things were out of my control, which have just objectively put me in a much more difficult position than other people, for sure. But I have to take more accountability for myself, that I could have been a lot farther. That even if I'm not toe-to-toe with these same people that have had this head start over me, we at least go to 6 or 7 games, right? And at that point, who got it in them more, me or them? I'm going with myself 10 times out of 10. But instead, I have to keep recalibrating unnecessarily to now I'm getting swept. Bring the brooms out. Maybe I'll get one game in. That was pre-planned so that way we can keep viewership. But otherwise, nah, they put belt to ass on me. When in reality, I'm just as capable as everybody else. I've been able to get this far given my circumstances. I mean, that's got to account for something. Sure, I'm not the prodigy the way everybody else around me is, but I can still make something shake. Because at one point, there's going to be a crossroads. There's going to be a crossroads of the work that I've put in and the change that I've put myself through, as well as my natural strengths, that these people that are essentially inverse, where they have the more, I wouldn't say natural because they had to work for it just at a much younger age, things that come easier for them, but other facets of life they don't know about, I would say I'm in the better position. I just have to start believing that and have to stick the course. So this whole idea that I'm talking about where change is non-linear, change takes time, change is a lot of trial and error, but not throw out the experiment and do a new one. It's just trial and error. You learn, you have data points, you have lessons that you can take off. That then, is my mic on? Yeah. That then allows you to, even when you do have those setbacks, you can still keep it pushing. And you're still compounding, even if it's not at the rate that you want to be compounding at. But that's the thing. You will only be compounding at your given capacity. And your capacity constantly changes. There's going to be times where life kicks you in the ass. Your capacity to to continue to incrementally build is going to be limited until you get your stuff sorted. There's going to be times where everything else around you is perfectly good and then you can really make those pushes. Your capacity is going to be different. Your ability to change on a day-to-day is based off of your capacity. The important thing is that no matter what the capacity is that you still stay in motion. What is it, Isaac's law of motion? An object in motion constantly stays in motion. Sounds corny, but apply it. Apply it. I'm talking to myself right now. I'm looking myself in the eye right now. Apply it. Just keep moving. And the next thing you know, you've built small wins for yourself. You've built habits. You've built traits that have reflected the change that you've put yourself through. Then now all these other external things that you've been looking for are just a byproduct of the person you've become. So instead of trying to change for an external result, change for yourself. You want to be really good at something? Don't be good at it because you want to work at a certain company or play for a certain team or average a certain amount. Be good at what you want to do because you just want to be good at it. Simple. You want to change, just do it for yourself. Because all the other external reasons why you're doing it will just be a byproduct of your success. Will be a byproduct of the grind that you put yourself through. But if you are putting yourself through change for a specific outcome, a specific body type, a specific career, a specific school, a specific job, a specific girl, whatever it is, or guy, I gotta preface that, so people don't get mad. Why are you always saying about it? When you try to attach the change to one of those things, if it doesn't happen, you're gonna blow yourself up over it. When in reality, you can look back and say, damn, I did a lot. I did a lot. So I guess change really is just one of those things where there's no one size fits all definition. There's no one size fits all parameter. There's no universal approach to it. Because everyone's capacity is going to be different. But the most important takeaway from this whole idea is that you try. So maybe the intrinsic value isn't just exhaustion, but it's effort. You get tired of one thing, so now you put an effort to change it. The fine line that we need to learn to walk, myself more than anybody else, is that we're not doing it for specific outcomes. We're doing it because we want to be better people. Damn. Good first episode, I'd say. That concludes the first episode of Sit and Reflect. I'm going to try and make this a weekly thing. And I hope that we have people that enjoy this. Stay tuned for more.